This is Bob Ross. We've come here with keys to the door. Welcome to the first lesson, Jammin with Pete, Ole Pete. We're going to talk about scales in theory, or not scales in theory, but we're talking music theory and scales. Oh, I forgot to prepare myself for this session. Hold on a second. Scene. All right, now I'm ready. Okay, so scales. Scales are a fundamental foundation for theory. Scales are 7 notes, and most of the time when you're teaching, when people teach theory, they use the C major scale because it has no sharps and flats. And what's a sharp or a flat? We'll get into that. There's a lot of terms we'll get into over the course of these lessons: sharps, flats, you know, like consonants, dissonants, key signatures, roots and tonics, tempos, cadence, intervals, octaves. Oh my gosh, lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. So anyway, scales. C major scale. C, D, E. Since there's 7 notes in Western music, and you want to take the first part of the alphabet, the geniuses that designed this back in the 1400s or whatever used the English alphabet A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So that's all the notes. We're not going to use the whole alphabet, thank goodness. There is no R sharp, okay? It's a people's key. So anyway, this is a basic major scale. If you were on a piano and you found middle C, it'd be all the white keys, okay? And that, so if we look at it, you say, well, how is a major scale constructed? Because a key signature in music is when you're playing in a different key. In other words, if we're playing in C, we know that certain notes work and certain notes don't work. Certain notes fit in that scale. And what I mean by work is music and sound and tone and all those kind of things like that all have to do with what you hear. Combination of notes can make things sound happy, sad, melancholy, evil. You hear it all the time in all the music you listen to in movies and TV. You know, you'll hear some Metallica, it sounds really dark, but then you'll hear some John Denver and it's really happy. All those tones are built out of scales and notes that go together in that scale. If you're playing in the key of C and you play notes outside of this, like an F sharp or a G flat, which actually is the same note. What? We'll get to that. It just sounds wrong. Maybe it's not necessarily wrong. If you want to use musical theory terms, you'll say it sounds dissonant. You know, it sounds, you know, a lot of people say it sounds sad. Some people call it a sour note. You being hearing somebody play somewhere and they'll play a note and you go, it just grated against your spirit. It was wrong. So all those notes and those feelings and those expressions are definable in music theory. So the first thing I'm going to show you is here how to construct a major scale. And again, this is getting into some stuff that's not necessarily that you're going to use on a daily basis, but understanding this is important as we get into other concepts like the circle of fifths. So if you look at a major scale, there are intervals between each one of these notes. An interval is just a tonal change. Sing Sound of Music, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. The distance between each one of those notes is an interval. In constructing a major scale, the intervals are a whole step, and then a half step, and a whole step, and a whole step, a whole step, and a half step. Now, on a guitar, what that typically means is that the distance from the 3rd fret to the 5th fret generally is a whole step. The note in between would be a half a step. So if you went back to Sound of Music, do, re, mi, do, re. If you went do, re, half step down, you can see there's difference. Chromatic is every single note played one right after another. There is no, it's all half steps. There are some natural half steps, notes that don't have the ability to have a whole step in between them. We'll get to those in a minute. So if you construct a scale, knowing that it's a whole step, half step, etc., you could apply this to any scale and be able to figure out what the notes are. Well, who wants to do that? Nobody. But you need to understand this relationship. That's why I'm showing it to you. Another thing that people will do is they'll number these. And then the producers are making me write this way, so I look like kindergarten. So you can say, well, why is C1 and not 8? Well, we'll get into another term in a moment. But what we're looking for is you can number these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so you could say, hey, in the C scale, we're looking at the third note. The third note is an E. It's a third. The fourth note is an F. It's a fourth. I know this is complicated. Actually, a lot of people think theory is extremely complicated, but when you break it down, it's actually not. It's just a lot of information. So as you can see, we've got 1 through 7. Now, C, or the first note of the scale, in correct terms, is called the tonic. Not gin and tonic, okay? It's not something you make a drink with. I don't know who came up with the word tonic. I don't know. Genius. It's also, in more modern times, referred to as the root or home. It's the place when you're listening to music that when you play all this stuff and it comes back, you're like, you're home, you're happy. In scales, that is the root, the tonic, or home. If you go exactly 1, here's a term for you, octave. Octave means the exact same note, just a pitch higher. Let's go back to the sound of music. I know y'all love that. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, do, do. I have a great singing voice. You know, I should have been pro with it, but I'm such a better guitar player. Anyway, so what you see is an octave is the same note, just a higher or lower pitch, exactly the same distance, either up or down. On a piano, you can hit middle C, C, high C, and the higher C and on up. There's multiple C's and down as well. Those are octaves. So we don't really go to 8. We just say, hey, we're back to 1, and we'll renumber, so on and so forth, up the... But 2 is 2, 3 is 3. Now, some genius decided to renumber some of these an octave up to call them different numbers down in here when we're playing chords, but we'll cover that in the chord method. Don't worry about that at this point. So this is how chords are constructed and built. This should get you started. Look this up. You can plug, if you want to start with a D, E, I'm not going to write any more because it'll look horrible, D, E, F, G. If you want to write the D major scale and you applied the whole step, half step here, you could write the scale and know what was sharp. Sharp means you're going to take the note up 1/2 a step. Flat means you're going to take it down 1/2 a step. One last note that's very important is the distance between E and F is automatically a half step, and the distance between B and C is naturally a half step. So there is no ability to have a whole step in here. That's why this isn't B sharp. Because if you said, well, this is a whole step, so it should be B, a half step. Why isn't this B C sharp? It's because that's a natural half step and that's a natural half step. That's why we use C to teach this, simply because there are no flats or sharps or anything in it. So that's it for scales. Go home and study. There will be a quiz later, and you will be graded. Have a great day.